They weren't supposed to be there. The human ship, Artemis Drift, had launched from the edges of a collapsing Earth. Half the crew were refugees, the rest barely trained engineers and medics. It was never meant to go far, just far enough. Far enough to escape the famine, the wars, the endless noise of a dying planet. They called it a colony mission, but everyone knew the truth. It was a gamble. And for a while, it seemed like it had worked. They'd found an unclaimed system, a quiet moon, and just enough oxygen to scrape together a life. A generation passed. Children were born who never knew Earth. They learned to grow food in frozen soil, to repair machines built centuries ago. Life was hard, but it was theirs. Until the sky caught fire. At first they thought it was a meteor storm. Then the scans showed heat signatures, massive ones, moving in strange patterns. Ships, alien ships, not just one species but two, at war, and somehow their peaceful little moon had landed smack in the middle of it. The humans had no weapons, not really. A few old kinetic turrets for clearing debris. Maybe a single rail cannon buried under ice, built as a joke during the early days. Nothing that could match the scale of what was coming. The first alien ship that crashed was a twisted black wreck, its hull leaking purple smoke, its crew already dead when the colonists arrived. Their bodies were like glass statues, tall and sharp, with fractal patterns etched into their skin. Some kind of crystal-based biology, maybe. The colony's makeshift science team didn't know what to make of them, but they scavenged what they could. A strange energy core, pieces of armor, a small handheld device that pulsed with red light when held. Then the second ship arrived, not in pieces, but hunting. It landed without warning, setting fire to an entire valley in its descent. Its crew were not statues. They were alive, and they were angry. 10-foot-tall beasts in obsidian armor stepped off the ramps like they owned the moon. They didn't speak. They pointed at the human structures, and their weapons opened up. Half the outer farms were gone in minutes. The colonists scattered, fleeing into underground tunnels, hiding in caves and broken mines. They had no army, no military, just determination and fear. A young girl, barely 16, named Lena, was the first to fight back. Her brother had died in the first strike. She had no formal training, just a stolen power cell from the first ship and a broken mining drone. Somehow she rigged them together and turned the drone into a walking bomb. She waited near a supply cache, and when one of the aliens came to investigate, she triggered it. The blast didn't kill it, but it hurt. The thing bled silver. It screamed in a sound that shattered glass. For the first time, the colonists saw something they hadn't seen in days. Hope. They could bleed. They could hurt. That night, dozens more colonists followed Lena's example. Drones were reprogrammed. Old mining tools became traps. One family even lured an alien into a collapsed tunnel and brought the whole shaft down on top of it. Still, they were losing. The aliens, later called the Varrock, had better tech, better weapons, better everything. Every day they pushed deeper into human territory. Every day more died. Then came the broadcast. A broken, patchy signal bouncing between alien channels, translated barely. The humans are a contamination. Purge the surface. Leave nothing behind. The colonists heard it. So did a second alien faction, the ones who had lost that first crashed ship. And suddenly, the game changed again. A new ship appeared in orbit, sleek, fast, almost silent. It didn't fire, didn't land. It just watched. Sometimes humans would see flickers in the sky, lights, movement, surveillance. Then, one day, a single drone landed near the human bunker. It extended a screen, and on it was a message, written in rough English. Do you want to make them regret this? The humans looked at each other, bloodied, tired, beaten, but something fierce burned in their eyes. They weren't soldiers, but they were survivors, and they were done running. No one touched the drone at first. It just stood there, humming quietly, projecting that single question over and over again. Do you want to make them regret this? Most of the colonists were too exhausted to respond. They hadn't slept properly in days. The tunnels they'd been hiding in were collapsing from the vibrations of alien walkers above. Supplies were running low. Oxygen tanks were shared among families like rationed candy. And yet, that screen changed everything. Juno, the colony's chief engineer, was the first to step forward. Her jumpsuit was scorched, stained with ash and oil. One of her arms hung limp, nerve damage from pulling a child out of a burning shelter. Her voice cracked as she stared down the drone. "Who are you?" The drone didn't answer. It flickered, static whirring in its projector. And then the message changed. "They are not the only empire in this sector." Behind her, murmurs broke out among the crowd. Questions, fear, some desperate spark of hope. Could it be another species? Were they friendly? Or just another monster with prettier teeth? The screen changed again. "The Varrock are brutal, arrogant, but not invincible. We have fought them for centuries. You are a variable they did not expect." A different kind of silence filled the bunker now. Not just fear anymore. Calculation. That message was no accident. Someone out there had been watching them fight back, watching them improvise traps, sabotage alien patrols, even weaponize mining drones. The humans were primitive by galactic standards, sure, but they were unpredictable, and more importantly, they were angry. "We can provide weapons, limited, covert, but you must do the bleeding." That was the final message before the drone shut down and went still, its screen dark. Juno knelt beside it, pulled open a hatch, and found a strange glowing cylinder inside, about the size of a soda can. When she touched it, her wrist comms pinged. New energy signature detected. Unrecognized tech. Compatible power flow, 64%. She looked up slowly. This thing could power half our grid. The next morning they found 5 more drones scattered around the edge of their settlement. Each one contained a similar canister, a small metal cube, and a black card-like object that pulsed when connected to human tech. No instructions, no explanations, just gifts. By then, the decision had been made. They were going to fight back. It wasn't a single moment of bravery. It was hundreds of tiny ones. Acts of desperation twisted into strategy. Juno and her team reverse-engineered the alien tech with what tools they had, cobbled together scanners, half-melted spectrometers, and a few teenagers who were far too good at hacking old Earth games. They discovered that the black cards were some kind of adaptive code keys. Once inserted into human machinery, they unlocked performance levels far beyond the original design. The colony's power grid went from flickering to full capacity in 2 hours. The old cargo lifters, once too heavy to operate, now hummed with impossible energy, moving like giant metallic gorillas through the ruins. But weapons, those were harder. The cubes turned out to be energy transducers, capable of focusing raw power into directional pulses. Dangerous, unstable, and completely untested on living targets. That's where Lena came in. The girl who had rigged the first explosive drone now led a team of scrappy young colonists, all under 20, most with more spirit than sense. They called themselves Ash Rats, a joke name that stuck. Their job was to field test everything. They took the cubes, bolted them onto reinforced pipes, and jury-rigged rifles. No sights, no safety. When the first shot was fired, It melted a 5-inch hole through a steel wall. The ash rats cheered like it was a birthday party. 3 days later, they launched their first offensive. It wasn't much, just a single assault on a Vorok supply walker parked in the valley. The humans crept through burnt trees and old irrigation trenches, dressed in carbon-coated cloaks to block thermal scans. Lena led the charge. 2 others set charges under the legs. When the blast went off, the walker tilted, one leg crushed. The alien inside tried to escape, but was met by 6 energy pulses to the chest. The thing dropped, convulsing. Silver blood spilled out across the dirt. The ash rats grabbed what they could, weapons, armor pieces, scraps of interface tech, and vanished into the woods before the Vorok air support arrived. The next day, the Vorok sent out a kill squad, heavily armed, 6 warriors. No survivors expected. But the humans weren't in the same place anymore. They had moved into the lower mines, the ones they'd abandoned years ago due to sinkhole instability. Now it was perfect. Tight tunnels, unpredictable floors, and walls thick enough to block scanners. The kill squad was funneled into the entrance shaft. Only one walked out. Limbless. Burned. Screaming. The humans let it go on purpose. Word spread fast, not just among the colonists, but across the stars. Whoever had been watching, whoever had sent the drones, they were listening again. This time, they responded with more than just silent encouragement. A large crate dropped from low orbit one night, crashing into a nearby ridge. No noise, no engine, just a sleek black container embedded in the rock. Inside, they found something terrifying. Armor, not just any armor, but modular suits fitted for human physiology. Strong, light, reactive, with smart-weave plating that responded to threats by hardening instantly. The suits weren't marked with any alien language. No symbols, just a simple red triangle on the left shoulder. And a message burned into the helmet's internal HUD. One war ends when another begins. Juno stared at the suit in silence for a long time. "Who the hell are they?" she muttered. No one knew, but the message was clear. The humans were now someone's weapon. Weeks passed. What began as ambushes turned into coordinated strikes. The colonists mapped Vorok patrol routes using stolen drones. They took over a damaged comms tower and used it to jam enemy signals. Children carried messages between tunnel sectors using old analog walkie-talkies, because the Vorok couldn't hack analog. They hit a transport barge next, full of fuel cells and food. 2 colonists died in the assault, but the rest made it out alive. More importantly, they made the Vorok look weak. The ash rats started leaving behind symbols after every successful mission, a spray-painted human skull with a red triangle behind it. It started as a taunt, but then it became something else. A warning. The Vorok started calling them the gray insects. At first it was mockery, then fear, because no matter how many they killed, more kept coming. Traps got smarter, attacks got bolder. Somehow a species they had written off as barely sentient was becoming a threat. That's when the executions began. The Vorok captured 6 humans during a failed raid on an ammo depot. The next morning they broadcast a live feed to every channel. The prisoners were lined up, hands bound, bruised and bloody. The Vorok commander, a massive beast with burn scars across half his face, stepped forward. He spoke in his language, deep, guttural, grinding, but the translation ran in the human tunnels through hacked comms. "You are vermin, pests. You should have bowed." He raised a plasma staff, and one by one, he executed the prisoners. Lena watched in silence. She didn't cry. No one did. They just watched. Then she turned off the feed and walked out of the room. By nightfall, a team of 20 humans launched an assault on the nearest Vorok barracks. They blew a hole in the wall using scavenged power cores and flooded the place with fire and shrapnel. No survivors. The next day, another crate landed. This time it held anti-grav rigs, small, shoulder-mounted units that let humans leap short distances like they were weightless. The playing field was leveling fast, but not fast enough. The Vorok had called in reinforcements. Satellites picked up a massive ship entering the system, 10 times the size of any they'd seen before. It was a carrier, full of fresh troops, heavier armor, bigger guns. The colony had pushed too far. The underdogs had bitten the lion, and now the lion was coming to end the game. Juno gathered the leadership in the old hydropower control room. Maps and hand-drawn blueprints covered the walls. Old Earth flags hung next to new symbols. The red triangle, the skull. "We can't fight this ship head-on," she said, pointing to the orbital scans. "But we don't have to." Everyone listened. "We take out their command core, the bridge, disable control systems. If we can get a team on board, we might be able to crash it or hijack it." Someone scoffed. "You want us to board a warship?" She didn't flinch. "We're already dead if we don't." Lena stepped forward, still wearing scorched armor from the last fight. "I'll go." Others volunteered, too. Old miners, teenagers, a few medics, no one trained, but everyone willing. Juno nodded. "Then we hit them tomorrow." She looked out across the maps, the desperate eyes, the flickering lights of a dying bunker. They weren't supposed to be here, but they were. And they weren't going quietly. The launch pad wasn't even a real launch pad. It used to be a water treatment plant, pipes, sludge tanks, and crumbling, rusted platforms. Now it held 2 of the oldest cargo shuttles humanity had ever scraped together. They didn't have weapons, barely had engines. One of them was held together with cold welded scrap and literal duct tape. The only reason it could fly was because gravity was weaker on the colony moon. But today, they weren't flying for survival. They were flying into war. Inside the bunker, Juno moved between the final checks like a machine. Her arm still hadn't fully recovered, but she refused to take any meds. Pain reminded her she was alive. She barked orders, rerouted power from the greenhouse modules, and overrode several safety systems that no longer mattered. "We get one shot at this," she said, voice sharp but calm. "Their carrier enters low orbit in 23 minutes. It'll send a dropship wave down to clear us. That's our window. While they focus down here, we hit them up there." Lena stood beside her, suited up in the modular armor they'd scavenged and retrofitted. The plating had scorch marks, dents, and even one Vorok blade embedded in the side, a trophy from her last kill. Her helmet was under her arm, face grim and silent. "What's the fallback?" someone asked. Juno paused. "There isn't one." The shuttles rose in silence. No cheering, no war cries, just the low hum of overloaded engines and the creak of hulls pushed past their limits. The colony disappeared beneath them, a patchwork of dirt and fire fading into the mist. Lena sat in the second shuttle, surrounded by 9 others, all armed, all armored, none of them professional soldiers. They were technicians, miners, mechanics, even a former chef. The woman sitting across from her, Mara, had once been a teacher. Now she carried a plasma spear rigged from 2 alien battery cores. Lena gripped her weapon, one of the hybrid rifles powered by the alien cubes. It buzzed in her hands, the energy barely stable. She liked it that way. Unpredictable. Like her. The pilot's voice crackled through comms. "Approaching shadow range. They haven't seen us yet." The carrier was enormous. It hovered just above the upper atmosphere, a beast of steel and black glass, multiple docking bays along its spine, with glowing hangars already releasing dozens of dropships into the sky below. Warships flanked it on either side, sleek and twitching like birds of prey. But the humans were flying under the carrier's belly, through its blind spot. Their ship trembled as heat flared from passing thrusters. "We're in position," the pilot muttered, "deploying magnet clamps. Good luck." The shuttles latched onto the underside of the alien ship with a loud thunk, metal meeting metal. Seconds later, the outer doors hissed open, and cold air rushed inside. Lena moved first. They spilled out into the carrier's underhull, a maintenance zone meant for drones, narrow, full of pipes and humming cables. The space reeked of ozone and machine oil. Alien symbols blinked along the walls in red and blue. Some of the markings had been scratched out and rewritten, signs of battle or mutiny. Juno's voice came through the comms. "Remember the plan. Plant explosives near the power conduits. You'll have 6 minutes after that before the surge is detected. Get to the bridge, cut command. Copy?" Lena replied, "Copy." She motioned to her team, and they split into 2 groups, one heading toward the conduits, the other following her. She went for the bridge. The deeper they went, the stranger it became. The alien ship wasn't built for comfort. The halls were angular, the ceilings too high, and the floor pulsed beneath their boots, like it was alive. At one point they passed a suspended chamber with what looked like floating limbs sealed in glass. Mara stared a second too long. "Keep moving," Lena whispered. They reached a curved corridor where thick cables ran like vines along the walls. According to the scans, this was the neural core, the ship's equivalent of a spine. Disrupting it would cause navigation problems, force a reboot, and open access to the command chamber. One of the humans, a quiet engineer named Wren, knelt and pulled out 2 canisters the size of fire extinguishers. 3-minute delay, he whispered, setting the timer. "We won't get a second shot at this." "Set 'em both," Lena said. As he worked, the corridor lights flickered. Something had noticed. A low hum rose through the walls, almost like breathing. Then came the sound of metal footsteps, heavy, precise, getting closer. Lena turned. "Positions!" The team dropped behind cover just as the hallway exploded in red light. 3 Varrock soldiers entered, massive, armored, glowing with war ink beneath their plates. Their weapons crackled with violet energy. The humans fired first. Lena's rifle screamed with unstable energy, a beam slicing through one of the aliens' midsection. It fell, gurgling, but the other 2 were already charging, plasma blades swinging. Mara jabbed her spear into the second one's throat, electricity sparking as it convulsed. The third grabbed a colonist and crushed his arm before Lena shot it point blank in the eye. 3 dead. 2 humans down. No time to stop. The charges were set. "Move!" Lena shouted. They ran. The ship howled. Alarms echoed through the halls in alien tones, long, guttural notes that sounded more like warnings to a predator than machinery. Lights went dark, then back to blinding. Doors slammed behind them. The route to the bridge was cut off. "No good," Wren growled. "They're locking us out." Lena looked up. Above them, a vertical shaft, maintenance access. She activated her anti-grav rig and shot up like a missile. The others followed, one by one, riding their shoulder packs like iron angels. They burst into a command balcony overlooking a massive hollow sphere, the bridge. It wasn't like anything human. The controls were not buttons or levers. They were organisms, jellyfish-like tendrils floating in green fluid, connected by beams of light. One Vorak officer stood at the core, jacked into a central pod, glowing with energy. He turned as they landed. Lena didn't hesitate. She fired once, and the beam hit the officer in the chest, but he didn't fall. He roared. Energy surged through the room as systems came alive. Defense turrets emerged from the walls, One opened fire, clipping Mara in the leg, sending her flying. "Hit the controls!" Lena shouted. Ren dove toward one of the tendrils and shoved the transducer core into its fluid chamber. The alien system sparked violently, lights flickering, as it tried to eject the foreign tech. The Vorak commander lunged, fast, too fast, and grabbed Ren by the throat. Lena charged. She slammed her entire weight into the alien, driving her blade, made from their own scavenged armor, into the soft joint beneath the jaw. The thing shrieked and dropped. Ren fell, choking but alive. The bridge spasmed, lights flickering, alarms going wild. Outside the viewports, the stars shifted. The ship was losing control. Juno's voice crackled in their ears. "We see it. Trajectory off. Their ship is descending. You did it." Lena stood in the wreckage, panting, her hands slick with alien blood. Around her, only 4 of them were still standing. Mara was crawling toward her spear, bleeding. Ren was half-conscious. Another had burns across his face. But they were alive, and they'd just hijacked a goddamn starship. "Get to the escape pods," Juno ordered. "We'll cover your descent." Lena looked at the alien commander, still twitching, half alive. "No," she whispered. "We're crashing it." "What?" "We're gonna make them regret this." They locked the pods. Then programmed the carrier to descend, straight into the Vorak war camp on the surface. The ship groaned as it tilted. Gravity failed. Sparks flew. The humans held on to whatever they could as the stars turned into clouds, then sky, then flame. From the ground, the colony watched as the alien carrier, the pride of the Vorak fleet, came screaming down like a vengeful comet. It smashed into the valley with the force of a small moon. The shockwave was felt for miles. The ground shook. The war camp was obliterated, and the message was clear. Humanity had arrived. The impact crater stretched for miles. What was once a Vorak forward base, rows of black towers, armored vehicles, and beast-like sentries, was now just smoldering ruin. Fires danced across the shattered remains of the fallen carrier, licking hungrily at jagged hull pieces and cracked alien metal. The sky still pulsed with red, not from sunset, but from the afterburn of destruction. And somewhere deep inside the wreckage, 4 humans were still alive. Lena clawed her way out from beneath a twisted beam, coughing through smoke and blood. Her helmet was cracked in half. Her arm bent the wrong way, but her eyes were burning with purpose. She didn't cry out. She didn't panic. She just breathed, slow, shallow, focused. "Ren," she choked, pushing aside a piece of alien debris. "Mara." A soft groan answered her. Ren was nearby, half pinned under a console. Blood poured from his shoulder where a jagged wire had speared through muscle, but he was conscious. Barely. I think I broke something important," he muttered, trying to laugh, but failing. "Tell me that was worth it." Lena looked around at the destruction above them, felt the tremors still rippling through the ground, and nodded slowly. It was. On the surface, the rest of the colony had watched the explosion from the hills. The Vorak fleet orbiting the moon had gone into chaos seconds after their flagship began its descent. Comms fractured. Patterns broke. And then, everything stopped. Their command hierarchy, the very heart of their operation, had just been carved out with a human-shaped knife. Juno stood at the edge of a lookout tower, wind slapping against her coat as she watched the smoke rise in the distance. She hadn't said a word since the crash. Not when the cheering started. Not when the first scouts confirmed what they saw was real. And not when someone asked if Lena made it out. She didn't know. Not yet. And she hated waiting. "Get me a team," she said finally, turning to one of the younger runners. "Evac unit, medical. We're going in. If she's alive in there, we're not leaving her behind." But even in destruction, the Varrock weren't finished. Far above, orbiting the moon's dark side, smaller ships remained. Not enough to take the colony again, not right away, but enough to retaliate. One of them, a sleek black cruiser without insignia, began powering up its rail batteries. Inside the command chamber, a new Varrock commander paced slowly, his face half covered by a mechanical exomask. His name was unpronounceable to humans, but his rank made him feared even among his own. He'd once bombed an entire moon to silence dissent. Now he stared at a feed of the colony below, zoomed in on the human symbols scratched into the earth near the crater. The red triangle, the skull, disrespect, contamination, unforgivable. He activated a transmission, encrypted and ancient. Somewhere in deep space, something heard it, something worse. Back inside the wreck, Lena dragged Ren toward a broken shaft that led upward. Her suit's servos were failing, one leg nearly locked, but she pushed through it, teeth gritted. Above, she saw sunlight, a break in the wreckage. Air. She shoved a pipe against the wall and hoisted Ren upward. He groaned but held on. Her muscles screamed, her spine nearly gave out, but inch by inch they climbed. Mara had never answered. One of the others, a medic named Bree, was already gone. Lena had seen her body half buried in flame back in the bridge chamber. When they finally broke through to the surface, Lena collapsed into ash and dirt, coughing violently. Ren rolled beside her and just lay still, blinking up at the wide, broken sky. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were still alive. And that was enough for now. The evac team found them 40 minutes later. Juno rode up front in a half-burned rover, her face streaked with grease and old tears. When she saw Lena limping toward them, half-dragging Ren behind her, she almost didn't believe it. But Lena raised her fist in a tired salute, that same fire still buried in her eyes, and Juno climbed down without a word. She pulled the girl into a tight hug. "Next time," she said softly, "we take a damn break before stealing a starship." Lena laughed, just once, then passed out in her arms. For 3 days the colony was quiet. The Varrock survivors, what few remained, had retreated to the far side of the moon, out of reach, regrouping. Their patrols vanished, their drones fell from the sky. Whatever tech they had monitoring the humans, it was gone now. And yet no one relaxed. Not fully. Juno knew better. Desperation made monsters dangerous, and someone was going to come looking for revenge. She sat in the colony command center, now reinforced with hybrid tech and salvaged alien cores, watching the outer sensor grid like a hawk. Each blip on the screen sent her nerves spinning. She wasn't alone. A figure entered silently from the west corridor. Dark suit, helmet under one arm. Not Vorok, not human either. The mysterious ally. Until now, they'd only sent drones, supplies, crates, silent support. Now, one of them had arrived in person. Juno stood slowly. "You've been watching," she said, "all this time." The figure nodded. "We didn't believe you would survive the first month," it replied, its voice mechanical, filtered. "You were not expected to adapt so quickly." Juno narrowed her eyes. "We don't do what we're expected to." A pause. Then the figure gestured to a projection, a hologram of the moon, the colony, and the surrounding star systems. Several red dots flashed in the distance. "Your strike has drawn attention," it said. "Not just from the Varrock. Others, old enemies, are now aware of your presence. The galaxy will no longer ignore humanity." "And you?" Juno asked. "What do you want from us?" It turned. "We want a wild card in the war." In the medical dome, Lena slowly came back to consciousness. Her arm was wrapped in compression mesh. Her leg had been reconstructed using alien bone gel. Her face was bruised and raw, but healing. Ren was beside her, half sitting with an IV stuck into his neck. "They say we're heroes," he mumbled. Lena blinked at him. "That's new." "I told them to name a drink after us," he added. "They said no." She smiled. Barely. Then turned serious. "They're not done, are they?" "No. They'll hit us harder next time." Ren didn't respond. He just nodded. Lena looked up at the ceiling, at the flickering lights, at the hum of machines around them that weren't meant to keep warriors alive. They were built for miners, engineers, farmers. They weren't soldiers, but they were becoming something else. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked. Ren didn't lie. "Maybe, but they're scared now. That's worth something." The Vorach commander received a final transmission days later, from his scouts in another system. Footage. A single human woman, young, armored, walking through fire with a rifle made from alien parts, dragging one of his dead warriors behind her like a trophy. Behind her, symbols carved into walls, ships, even they're dead. The triangle, the skull. They'd underestimated a dying species, and now they had awoken something far worse than an enemy. They had awoken a future. The first time the humans heard the word species-class threat, it didn't come from a Vorach broadcast. It came from the ones who had helped them. They still didn't have a name. The mysterious faction that sent tech, drones, and armor never revealed their species, their world, or their past. They wore masks. They spoke in flat tones. And every time they spoke to Juno, they reminded her of a simple truth. You are not allies. You are an opportunity. But now, they were nervous. Juno stood in the command center, a cracked screen in front of her. The masked envoy was on the other side, its voice transmitting through high-pitched harmonics that translated into English by raw force of technology. Your species, it said, has reached the threshold of threat classification. She stared at the screen. Meaning? Meaning, the envoy said coldly. If you are not controlled, you will become a greater problem than the Vorach. Juno folded her arms. You gave us weapons. You dropped tech into our hands. We didn't ask for this fight. That is irrelevant now. The envoy's image flickered. Behind it, she saw something strange for a fraction of a second. What looked like a wide hall of columns, maybe a throne room or a council chamber. Then it was gone. Your kind adapts too quickly. You imitate. You create. You improvise beyond tolerance. The others have noticed. What others? The envoy paused. Then, the Council of Eight, the core systems, even the broken accord. Juno's eyes narrowed. So we're being watched now? You were always being watched, the voice said. Now you are being calculated. And then the transmission ended. Back on the ground, the colony was changing. What had once been a rough network of caves and salvage bunkers was now beginning to look like a fortress. The power grid ran stable, powered by 3 hybrid cores and a new energy converter stitched together from Vorach parts and human genius. The ash rats had expanded. They weren't just kids with modified drones anymore. They were an organized guerrilla unit, training daily in scavenged armor. The old hydroponic domes had been repurposed for food and gene crops. One of the medics even managed to synthesize alien protein gel into a nutritional base. No one starved now. Lena walked the edges of the colony wall. Well, it was a wall now. A barrier of repurposed alien plating welded into slabs, 10 feet high, built into the surrounding cliffs. Defense towers rose every 50 meters. Auto turrets hummed softly, waiting. She passed Mara on the west side, adjusting one of the targeting relays. "How's the leg?" Lena asked. Mara smirked. "Synthetic. Doesn't ache anymore. Makes a good hammer if I swing it hard enough." They shared a short laugh, and then silence. Lena stared up at the sky. Clouds swirled around the pale blue atmosphere, but above that, space. Quiet. Watching. "You think they'll come back?" Mara asked softly. Lena didn't answer right away. Then, "They didn't take the loss well. I don't think they know how." Mara's smile faded. "I saw Ren in the machine shop yesterday. He's building something big." "Yeah," Lena said. "He calls it the Bone Breaker. Says it's a rail cannon, or maybe a siege drill. He's not sure which yet." The silence returned, but this time it was heavy with the weight of what's next. Ren, as it turned out, had gone a little strange. After the crash, after watching so many friends die, he stopped joking. He barely spoke. But his hands never stopped moving. Inside the restructured machine depot, once a warehouse for scrap, now an industrial hub, he had built something terrifying. A rail system long enough to pierce a mountain, powered by the same core tech he'd once used to charge a field rifle. The Bone Breaker. Lena came to see it one evening. The sun was setting behind it, casting a long shadow over the lower camp. "It works," Ren said, still not looking at her. "Fires yet?" "Not yet. I'm still working on the recoil system. If I pull the trigger now, it'll blow the back end out." She nodded. "We're building weapons now." "Not just weapons," Ren said, wiping grease from his cheek. "We're building a future that scares them." Lena stared at the Bone Breaker, then down at her hands. They used to dig soil. Now they carried death. Juno had called for a meeting that night. Every squad leader, every tech chief, even some of the older colonists who usually stayed out of strategy. They met in the hollowed-out control dome. Maps of the moon floated in mid-air, projected by hybrid crystal cores. Red dots pulsed on the far side of the sector. Varrock movement. Strange patterns. Not attacks, but staging. "They're preparing something," Juno said, pointing to the data. "Could be reinforcements. Could be something worse. They haven't hit us yet because they're watching. Waiting. Maybe scared. Maybe planning." Mara spoke up. "Then maybe we hit them first." "No," Juno replied firmly. "Not yet. We're still not ready." Someone else, a miner named Kaito, who had survived the initial attacks with just a hammer and a bad temper, stood up. "So what is ready then? We've got cannons, we've got armor, we've got half a railgun the size of a damn train. What are we waiting for?" Juno stepped forward. "We're waiting for the galaxy to blink first." She tapped a button on her tablet. A new image projected. An alien cruiser, not Vorok, sleeker, purple gold, with soft curves and solar sails. 3 days ago, this entered orbit on the far side. It didn't engage us. It didn't land. But it's there. "What is it?" Lena asked. "We don't know. But it's not Vorok." Ren tilted his head. "So, who are we fighting now?" Juno looked each of them in the eyes. "Everyone." That night, Lena couldn't sleep. The medics gave her something weeks ago for the pain, but it did nothing for the dreams. She saw the crash again. Over and over, she saw the alien commander. She saw Bree's body under the flames. She heard the ship screaming as it fell. But now there was something else in the dream. A voice. Not human. Not machine. "You are unfinished." She jolted awake in her bunk, sweating. There was no sound in the room, just the hum of the hybrid battery keeping the lights low. But the voice stayed in her head. Over and over. "You are unfinished." The next morning, another drone appeared. Not from the masked allies. This one was old, rusted, Varrock design, but damaged. It limped into the outer perimeter, sparking, and collapsed in front of the auto turrets. Juno ordered it brought in and scanned. Inside was a single message, translated, broken, but clear enough. We did not expect you to fight this long. We did not expect you to survive. That was our mistake. We request conversation. Silence in the room. Ren muttered, "Now they want to talk?" Juno didn't smile. "No, they want to know if we're stupid enough to let them get close again." Lena stepped forward. "I'll go." Juno turned to her. "Absolutely not. I've seen them up close. I've fought them. Let me go. Let me look them in the eye when they realize we're not dying quietly." Juno hesitated. Then finally she nodded. "Fine, but we go in armored. We go in prepared. And if they so much as twitch wrong," she tapped her sidearm, "we end the conversation early." The meeting was set in the ruins of a burned-out transport hub, halfway between the human colony and the Varrock's forward encampment. Neutral ground, they called it. But everyone knew there was no such thing. Lena stood at the center of the envoy squad, her armor cleaned but still bearing the blackened marks of the carrier crash. She refused to cover them. Let them see what she'd walked through. Let them know she hadn't just survived. She'd returned. Behind her walked Mara, Ren, now wearing a reinforced brace on his shoulder, and two others from the Ash Rats. They carried nothing obvious, but everyone had weapons hidden under their cloaks, built into their suits, woven into the very fabric of their survival. No one came empty-handed anymore. The Varrock arrived late, 6 of them. Their armor gleamed obsidian in the sun, tall, sharp-edged figures with glowing patterns running through their bodies, war paint etched into flesh, not fabric. The commander in the middle wore a cape that rippled like liquid metal. His face was expressionless, but his eyes watched Lena like she was an infection that couldn't be cured, only contained. Juno's voice whispered through Lena's earpiece. "They brought heavy guards. Be ready." Lena didn't blink. She took one step forward and stared the Varrock leader down. "You said you wanted to talk," she said, not bothering with niceties. "So talk." For a moment, no one moved. Then the Varrock leader's voice echoed, deep and layered, like it came from a chorus of throats. "You are not what we expected." Lena smirked. "We get that a lot. You were considered weak, unstructured, unfit for long-term survival. Your kind should have burned out. You tried, didn't work. We underestimated the human trait of defiance. You underestimated a lot of things." The Varrock leader tilted his head. His armor shifted subtly, like it was alive. Then he spoke again. "You cost us a ship. You shattered a command unit that took 4 generations to assemble. You crippled our dominance in this sector, and you made us appear vulnerable to our enemies." "Good." He took one slow step forward. The guards behind him tensed. So did Lena's team. "This is not a negotiation. It is a proposal." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You don't get to propose anything. You are surrounded by growing threats, not just us. Others have seen your defiance. They will not all be curious. Some will come to extinguish you. We're ready." "No," he replied. "You are evolving, but not fast enough." A pause, then, "We offer a solution." Now it was Lena's turn to step forward. "You're going to help us?" "We are offering containment, a space, a boundary, a line you will not cross. In return, we will not eliminate your colony. We will speak for you when the core systems ask questions. We will defend your right to exist." She laughed in his face. It echoed across the charred concrete. "You're not serious." "You misunderstand. This is the most mercy your species will ever receive." "Mercy?" Lena asked, stepping even closer. "We took your ship. We killed your warriors. We cracked your code. You think we're scared of what's next?" "You should be." She didn't blink. "You're here because you can't stop us. You're here because something bigger than you is watching now. You came to beg, wrapped in threats, coated in pride. But it's still begging." The Vorok leader stiffened. The air thickened. The tension hung sharp enough to cut. Then, without warning, he removed his helmet. His face was a jagged landscape of ridges and biometal scars. His eyes, 4 of them, 2 horizontal, 2 vertical, glowed dim amber. One side of his face was melted from an old plasma burn. He spoke low. "I lost 2 sons on your moon, and a mate, all warriors, all elite. You killed them." Lena didn't look away. "Then I guess you know how we feel." "I came here to understand why. Why your kind fights so hard for a broken colony on a dying rock." Lena looked around. At the dust, the wreckage, the blackened towers and melted vehicles. Then she looked back at him. "We're not fighting for land, or metal, or honor." She placed a hand over her chest. "We fight because you tried to erase us. You kicked down our door, set fire to our home, and told us we weren't worth breathing the same air." Her voice dropped. "We don't forgive that." "Then we are at war." "No," Lena said. "We're already in one." They didn't shake hands. They didn't sign anything. The meeting ended the way it started, in silence, in tension, and in distance. Lena turned her back first, deliberate, daring. She walked away with her team without glancing back. The Vorok didn't follow. But as soon as the humans were clear of the neutral zone, Juno's voice hit the comms. "He lied." Lena slowed. "Go on." "Our stealth drone picked up their transmissions before the meeting. They're not planning containment. They're requesting orbital fire from one of their allies." Lena's face turned cold. "Then we strike first." That night, the colony went into full war mode. Not defense, offense. Juno stood before the full population in the open clearing near the comm tower. Floodlights cast harsh shadows across metal and stone. Behind her, the symbol of the red triangle glowed faintly on the command post wall. "We gave them a chance to back off," she said. "They offered us a cage." No one spoke. "They've called in another fleet. Bigger, faster. But we're not waiting to be bombed again. This time we move first. This time we choose the battlefield." She looked down. "You all know what's coming." Then her voice rose. "So let's make history fear us." The next day, before sunrise, the Bonebreaker fired for the first time. The recoil ripped 3 entire buildings apart, but the shot flew true. It traveled 7 kilometers in under 2 seconds, hit the Vorok orbital comm relay, and vaporized it in a single pulse. The noise echoed across the moon, and the message was clear. We are not done. We are not finished. We are not afraid. They say you can hear the sound of war before you see it. That wasn't true this time. The sky gave no warning, no rumble, no echo, just silence. Then light. A streak of blinding white tore across the moon's upper atmosphere, a thin arc, barely visible, like a comet tracing the edge of the world. Then another, and another. By the time the first blast hit the far cliffs, it was too late to prepare. The Vorok retaliation had begun. It wasn't a full invasion, not yet. This was a message, a warning delivered at orbital velocity. They weren't just aiming to destroy, they wanted to fracture the colony's spine. Juno watched the first impact from the command center. The screen flared white, then cut to black. One of the outer solar arrays was gone. Just gone. No fire, No wreckage, just an empty crater where it used to be. "How many shots?" she asked, her voice tight. The tech beside her, a younger girl named Elle, swallowed. 7 so far, 1 every 90 seconds. They're targeting infrastructure, not people. Yet, Juno clenched her jaw. They're softening us. They want to starve us into surrender. Ella hesitated, then whispered, "What do we do?" Juno turned to the table, where a cracked hologram showed the Vorak fleet's orbital positioning. She tapped the lead cruiser. "We go up." On the surface, Lena didn't wait for orders. The Bonebreaker's first shot had gotten the Vorak's attention. Now they were lashing out from orbit. If they weren't stopped, the colony would be buried before the ground war even started. She paced outside the gear depot, armor half donned, helmet under one arm. Mara and Ren stood with her. Ren adjusted his new shoulder brace, the left side now armored with a Vorak plating mod he'd designed himself. "I say we hit their support frigate first. It's the one supplying coordinates for surface strikes." "You're sure?" Lena asked. He nodded. "We picked up encrypted data relays after the last hit. That ship's feeding location algorithms to the rest of their fleet. Kill the brain, the rest get blind." Mara tightened the grip on her spear rifle. "Then we kill the brain." Lena turned to them, her voice steady. "We're not coming back this time." Mara cracked a grin. "We said that last time?" "Yeah," Ren added. "And the time before." Lena looked at both of them. "Then let's make this the time they never forget." Their shuttle launched under the cover of magnetic interference. Stealthed. Silent. Just 3 people and a half-malfunctioning cloaking field stitched together from alien scrap and human desperation. As they broke atmosphere, the ship trembled. Outside the viewport, the Vorak fleet loomed like a wall of steel teeth, cold, patient, ready to bite. Lena looked out at it, unflinching. They had no permission, no backup, no plan for extraction. But the thing about humans, the thing no species had figured out how to calculate yet, was this. They didn't need to win to cause chaos. The Vorak support frigate wasn't guarded the way their capital vessels were. It was smaller, less armored, but critically important. The trio breached through the waste ventilation port, landing in an access shaft barely large enough to crouch through. The air stank of heated metal and antiseptic fluid. As they moved, Ren tapped into the internal feed. "I'm in," he whispered. "Main controls 2 decks up, engine cores 4 down. We can kill nav or kill propulsion." "We're killing the brain," Lena said. "Head to control. I'll go for the override." Mara blinked. "Alone?" Lena looked her in the eye. "You're the better shot." The fight started with one bad hallway. 2 Vorak sentries spotted them before they reached the lift. Alarms blared. The ship woke up like a beast sensing blood. Mara spun on instinct, fired her spear rifle, and dropped the first enemy in a hiss of silver blood. Ren lobbed a core charge, blowing the second one into the wall. Lena dove through the smoke and vanished down the left corridor. Ren shouted after her, 6 minutes max before reinforcements sweep." Lena didn't respond. She was already running full speed, boots slamming against alien steel, heart hammering in her chest. The override chamber was like something out of a nightmare. Tubes pulsed along the walls, full of viscous fluid. A suspended brain-like node floated in the center, pulsing with blue light, wired to every section of the ship. Lena stepped in, breath ragged, and raised her rifle. The chamber reacted. Screams echoed from the walls. Real ones. Voices overlapping, whispering in a language she didn't understand, but one that pierced deep into the skull. Incomplete, deviant, out of sequence, wrong. She fired into the node. Nothing happened. Then the fluid inside the chamber turned black, and the ship started screaming back. On the control deck, Mara and Ren fought like demons. 5 Vorok soldiers were down. 2 more came from the right. Bigger ones. Reinforced armor. Adaptive weapons. Ren shoved a charged capacitor into the mainframe console and yelled, "Give me 30 seconds!" Mara ducked a blade swing, rolled, and blasted one soldier off the platform. The other slammed her into a wall, crushing her armor, fracturing bone. She didn't stop. She jammed her knee into its ribs, stabbed her knife into its throat, and used her leg brace to drive it backward into a sparking conduit. They fell together. She didn't get up. Lena tore open the main connection hub with her bare hands. Tubes burst. Fluid spilled across her armor. She ripped the pulsing node free, slammed the override core into place, and triggered the loop. The ship convulsed. Alarms died. Engines stuttered. From orbit, the frigate lost its glow, its limbs going dark one by one, like a spider curling into itself. Juno saw it from the ground. She didn't need a scanner to confirm. The humans had killed the brain. Only one shuttle returned. Lena, half conscious, dragging Ren's body. Mara was gone. Ren was alive. Barely. He'd taken a blade to the gut. The medics didn't say much, just worked fast. Lena sat outside the medbay in silence. Blood dried on her armor. Juno found her there an hour later. "They're scattering," she said. Lena didn't look up. "The Vorok," Juno added. "They lost their sync. You hit their nerve core. They're retreating to the far orbit ring." Still, Lena said nothing. Juno sat beside her. "You bought us time." Lena stared at the floor. "Mara's dead." "I know. They won't stop." "I know that too." Then Juno looked her straight in the eyes. "But neither will we. Far beyond the moon, beyond the known systems, another ship stirred. Not Vorok, not Core, not even from the factions that had monitored humanity's rise. It was older, darker, and it had heard the screams of the override brain. Inside its vast black hull, it stored memories of empires that had vanished under silence, of species that thought defiance meant survival. It played the final scream of the Vorok brain chamber again and again, not out of interest, out of hunger. A new species was rising, and it had not yet been tested. There was a silence across the moon. Not peace. Not victory. Just the kind of silence that comes after too much blood has been spilled, when even the wind seems to pause in respect. The Vorok ships were gone from near orbit. After Lena's strike crippled their command relay, they pulled back. Their forward camps abandoned. Their drones shut down. Their signal towers blinked off one by one. But Juno knew better than to celebrate. "They're not retreating," she told the command center. She tapped a hollow display, dragging a map of outer sectors into focus. Red pings hovered just beyond the colony's sensor range. "They're regrouping." Elle looked up from her console. "Still no transmissions?" "None," Juno said, "and that's what scares me." Because silence wasn't their style. The Vorok were conquerors, not ghosts. Even when they lost, they barked threats. Even when their blood spilled silver into the dirt, they promised vengeance. Now, they said nothing. And that meant something worse was coming. Lena hadn't left Ren's side in 3 days. He hadn't woken since the strike. The medics had stabilized him, but his vitals were low. Damage from the gut wound, infection, the strain of orbital descent in a ruptured shuttle. She sat beside him every hour, awake, alert, armor on, a ghost watching over another. Mara's name hadn't left her lips, not once. The others had lit a fire in her memory, carved her name into the canyon wall near the east ridge. the same place where the first Vorok scout team had been buried under a landslide. But Lena couldn't go. She couldn't mourn. Not until the next storm passed, because somewhere out there a new shadow had appeared. She saw it in her dreams. Long, black, cold, not alive, not machine, a thing from before memory, a whisper older than stars, and it was coming. On the 5th day, it arrived. No alarms, no warning, just a drop in temperature, across the entire moon. Fires went out, crops wilted, power cells slowed, even with the hybrid cores still running hot, and then the sky turned dark. Not like night, like absence. Something blocked the sun. At first they thought it was a ship, but it wasn't moving. It was still. Massive. Irregular. Ella called Juno to the watchtower. "You need to see this." Juno climbed to the top, looked through the long-range scope, and felt her stomach drop. It wasn't a ship. It was a fragment, like a piece of a dead world, cracked and hollow, embedded with ancient structures that pulsed with dark energy. And it was descending, slowly, carefully. With purpose. They sent a drone. It didn't come back. The second drone never made it halfway before its systems fried and its feed turned to static. Lena climbed to the tower with Juno, armor on, rifle slung low. Her face was pale, shadows under her eyes. She looked through the scope. "Is that Vorok?" she asked. "No," Juno whispered. "Not even close." There were symbols on the black stone, etched in lines that seemed to shift when you weren't looking at them. Glyphs that burned faint blue in the snow. No readable pattern, no translation match, just hunger. "Whatever it is," Juno said, "it wasn't built for diplomacy." Lena lowered the scope. "We hit it first." The Bonebreaker fired. Its shell tore through the air with the fury of 1,000 tons of rage, screaming toward the alien fragment like the wrath of the planet itself. It hit dead center and did nothing. Not a crack, not a mark. Then the fragment responded. Not with missiles, not with beams, with sound. A low, thunderous tone that vibrated through metal, skin, and bone, like a chorus of machines screaming in reverse. Across the colony, people dropped to their knees. Some bled from the ears. Lights exploded. Glass cracked. One of the towers collapsed from resonance alone. Lena stumbled backward, pressing her hands to her ears, screaming, but no sound came out. Just pressure, dread, memory that wasn't hers. Ren woke up screaming, eyes wide, gasping. The medics rushed in, but he shoved them away. "She's here," he choked out. "It's not a ship. It's a mind." They stared at him. "What did you say?" Ren pointed to the sky, eyes wild. "She heard us when we killed the Vorok node. The override scream. It reached her. She's feeding on the death of machines, on disruption. We woke something that kills civilizations through their minds." Juno froze. "Are you saying it's a sentient weapon?" Ren nodded, shaking. "No, worse. It's a gravekeeper, and we just stepped on the bones." Lena gathered the council. They didn't meet in the dome anymore. It had shattered during the resonance wave. They stood in a cave bunker, lit by emergency lights and a flickering projection of the approaching fragment. Juno looked around the room. Farmers, engineers, fighters, survivors. "This isn't about territory anymore," she said. "This is about whether we leave a story behind or just a crater." No one spoke. Then Lena stepped forward. She dropped a cracked Vorok helmet onto the table. "If we die," she said, "we make it so loud that the galaxy remembers the noise." The final stand wasn't built from hope. It was built from rage. The Bonebreaker was rotated toward the fragment again, this time loaded with a core wrapped in every explosive compound the colony had ever created. It wouldn't destroy the mind, but maybe it could dent it. Juno coordinated a full evacuation of non-combatants into the deep caves. Not for safety, just to give them a few more hours. Lena and the ash rats took up sniper positions along the ridge. If the entity sent anything down, they'd make sure it didn't leave. Ren, barely walking, connected the override pulse they'd used on the Vorok ship into the colony's comm tower, rerouting it through every amplifier and resonance speaker they had. If the mind was listening, they'd let it hear everything. It began at night. When the stars vanished, the fragment pulsed once, and dozens of thin black spears launched from its hull, more like limbs than weapons. They stabbed into the moon's surface silently. Then, things began to crawl out. Hollowed Vorok, not alive, not dead. Shells reanimated by something older. Their bodies jerked unnaturally, their eyes empty sockets that pulsed with blue light. They came without tactics, just hunger. Lena was the first to fire. Her shot cracked through one of their skulls. It collapsed, and something inside slithered free, screaming. She whispered to herself, "This isn't war, this is rot." Then she kept firing. The final hour was chaos. The Bonebreaker fired, again and again. Each time the fragment reacted. More screams, more corpses, and through it all, Lena stood tall, rifle broken down to a blade. She fought on the walls with Juno, with the last of the ash rats, their armor cracked, their breath thin, the sky bleeding light. Ren, deep inside the tower, activated the override pulse. It echoed up through the stone, through the wires, through the bones of the moon itself. And the fragment paused. Just once. Then it screamed, one final echoing sound that shattered the sky itself. When the dust settled, the colony was gone. Not flattened, but burned into silence. Juno's body was never found. Ren's last message was a half-corrupted audio log. "We didn't win, but we ended it." Lena was found days later by a salvage team from the core systems, barely alive, buried under wreckage, clutching a blade carved from a Vorok commander's chest plate. She didn't say much, just asked for the map. "Why?" the officer asked. She looked at him, blood drying across her lips, her eyes dim but not broken. "Because I'm not finished." And far away, in the silent halls of galactic rulers, a new name was whispered. Not with fear, with caution. Human, species-class threat, adaptive, unyielding, dangerous. One scout wrote the final report. "They do not conquer, they do not beg, they do not submit. They burn, and from the ashes they build again."